It was a warm summer evening, and the beach was unusually quiet. My friends and I decided to stay late to savor the peaceful atmosphere. The sun was setting slowly, casting long, golden shadows across the sand. The sky was a canvas of fiery oranges and purples, reflecting on the tranquil waves. We walked along the shoreline, enjoying the calmness and the occasional laugh that broke the silence. As the sun dipped further below the horizon, I noticed a figure sitting in the lifeguard chair. The silhouette was unmistakable against the fading light, yet something about it felt off. The lifeguard chair, usually bustling with activity during the day, was now occupied by a solitary figure in the deepening twilight. "Isn't it too late for the lifeguard to still be here?" I whispered to my friends, trying to keep my voice low. They shrugged it off, absorbed in their own conversations, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that crept over me. The figure remained unmoving, as if it were carved from stone, watching us with an intensity that was both unnerving and curious. As the sky darkened, we decided it was time to pack up and head home. We gathered our belongings, but I kept glancing back towards the lifeguard chair. The figure was still there, a dark shape against the dusky sky. It wasn't until we were almost ready to leave that I noticed the chair was now empty. Instead, there were distinct footprints leading down to the water's edge. "Guys, look at this," I pointed out, my voice trembling slightly. But when my friends looked, they saw nothing out of the ordinary. The footprints were clearly visible, but they seemed to disappear once they reached the water. Determined to prove that I wasn't imagining things, I walked towards the footprints. They led into the surf, gradually disappearing beneath the waves. My heart raced as I noticed that the water was unnervingly still. The gentle lapping of the waves seemed to have ceased, replaced by an eerie silence. Then, I heard it, a soft, eerie voice calling my name from somewhere out in the darkness. I scanned the area, but there was no one in sight. The voice grew louder, more insistent, and it felt like it was coming from all directions. Each call sent shivers down my spine, amplifying my sense of dread. As we hurried to leave the beach, an old man approached us. His face was etched with lines of worry and age, and his eyes seemed to hold secrets from a bygone era. "You kids shouldn't be out here after dark," he warned, his voice grave. "This beach is haunted by a lifeguard who drowned while saving a child. They say his spirit watches over the beach, forever searching for the child he couldn't save." My blood ran cold at his words. I hadn't shared with anyone the details of the voice I had heard. That night, I lay awake in bed, the image of the Phantom Lifeguard's watchful eyes haunting my thoughts. The sense of being watched was almost palpable. The next day, I decided to research the story. I scoured old newspapers and historical records and eventually found an article about a lifeguard named Jake, who had died exactly 50 years ago to the day. He had tried to save a young boy who had been swept out to sea, and tragically, neither had survived. Determined to find closure, I returned to the beach at sunset. The sky was ablaze with the colors of twilight, and the air had a crisp, cool quality. I stood by the lifeguard chair feeling a mix of apprehension and resolve. "Jake, I know your story. You don't have to be alone anymore," I called out, hoping my words would reach the spirit. The air grew noticeably colder, and I felt a subtle shift in the atmosphere. I sensed a presence beside me, a gentle but unmistakable sensation. Turning slowly, I saw a translucent figure of a young man in a lifeguard uniform. His eyes were filled with a profound sorrow, and as he looked at me, there was a deep sense of gratitude in his gaze. He nodded slowly, his form beginning to fade away, until he was nothing more than a whisper of light. I stood there for a few moments longer, feeling a sense of peace settle over me. The Phantom Lifeguard's vigil was finally over, and I hoped that his spirit had found the rest it had longed for.
My friends and I had always been drawn to local legends and eerie tales, so when we heard about Black Sand Beach, we were both intrigued and excited. The beach was known for its dark, volcanic sand and a reputation for being cursed. Local folklore spoke of restless spirits and ominous occurrences, but we brushed it off as mere superstition. Eager for an adventure, we decided to spend the night there, hoping to experience the supposed curse firsthand. We arrived at the beach in the late afternoon, and the sky was already beginning to darken. The wind howled as we set up our tents, and the waves crashed violently against the shore, their rhythmic roar creating an unsettling backdrop. The air felt charged with an eerie energy that seemed to intensify as the sun dipped below the horizon. Despite the strange feeling, we tried to stay upbeat. We built a bonfire, its flames flickering against the encroaching darkness, casting long, ominous shadows on the sand. As night settled in, we gathered around the fire, exchanging ghost stories and laughing nervously. The shadows danced around us, and every gust of wind seemed to carry an unspoken warning. The atmosphere was thick, with a mixture of excitement and unease. We kept our conversations light, but the occasional shiver that ran down our spines betrayed our underlying apprehension. Around midnight, the mood shifted. The wind seemed to pick up, and we began to hear whispers carried on the breeze. At first, they were faint and indistinct, almost like the wind itself was playing tricks on us. But as the minutes passed, the whispers grew louder, more distinct. It felt as if the very sand beneath us was murmuring secrets, the sound becoming increasingly insistent. My friend Lisa, usually the bravest among us, stood up, her face pale. "Do you hear that?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It's saying our names." The group fell silent, straining to hear. The whispers had indeed become clear and unmistakable, each one calling out our names in eerie unison. Panic began to set in. I could see the fear in my friend's eyes as we scrambled to gather our things. The whispers grew louder, almost deafening, and the ground beneath us began to tremble. Suddenly, the dark sand around us began to shift. Black shadows started rising from the ground, forming indistinct, human-like shapes. The cursed spirits of Black Sand Beach had awoken. They reached out with shadowy hands, their forms writhing and undulating as they tried to drag us into the sand. The stench of decay filled the air, and the once familiar beach now felt like a place of nightmarish horror. I fought desperately to break free from the shadowy grasp that tried to pull me down. My heart raced, and adrenaline surged through me as I grabbed Lisa and the others, pulling them towards the cliffs. We stumbled and struggled, our fear and exhaustion making every step feel like a Herculean effort. The whispers had turned into anguished wails, a symphony of sorrow that seemed to pierce through the night. As we neared the cliffs, the spirits followed relentlessly, their shadowy forms slithering up the rocky terrain in pursuit. We scrambled up the cliffs, the jagged rocks scraping against our skin, and finally reached the top. There we spotted an old, abandoned lighthouse, its silhouette standing stark against the night sky. Desperate for refuge, we burst through the crumbling door and barricaded ourselves inside. Inside the lighthouse, the wails and whispers from outside were muffled, but the oppressive atmosphere remained. We leaned against the door, trying to catch our breath, our minds racing with the terror of what we had just escaped. As we looked around, we noticed ancient writings scrawled on the walls. The faded text told a haunting tale of a shipwreck that had cursed the beach centuries ago. According to the legend, the ship's crew had betrayed their captain, leaving him to die in the wreckage. His vengeful spirit, unable to find peace, cursed the beach, condemning anyone who stayed there to a similar fate. The writings detailed the horrific events and the subsequent rise of the restless spirits that haunted the sand. As dawn approached, the wails and shadows outside began to recede. The first light of morning broke through the windows, casting a pale glow over the interior of the lighthouse. Exhausted but relieved, we made our way down the cliffs and back to safety, vowing never to return to Black Sand Beach. The experience left us deeply scarred. The whispers and wails haunted our dreams for months, a constant reminder of the nightmarish encounter. The cursed beach and its vengeful spirits became a dark chapter in our lives, a tale of terror that we would never forget. Black Sand Beach, with its eerie whispers and restless spirits, had claimed another group of unwary souls, and we knew better than to test its curse again.
I've always had a deep love for the ocean, and every summer I'd escape to my family's beach house. This year, while exploring the rugged coastline, I stumbled upon a hidden cove that seemed like a secret paradise. The water was crystal clear, and the cove was embraced by towering cliffs, making it feel like a private sanctuary. I spent hours there each day, basking in the golden sun and marveling at the treasures hidden in the tide pools. One evening, as the sun cast its final golden hues across the sky, I heard a hauntingly beautiful song carried on the breeze. The melody was so enchanting that I was drawn irresistibly to the water's edge. There I saw her, a stunning woman with long, flowing hair and eyes as blue as the deepest ocean, singing a mournful tune. Her voice was ethereal, imbued with a sadness that seemed to echo from the very depths of her soul. "Who are you?" I asked, unable to tear my gaze away from her mesmerizing presence. The woman's smile was tinged with a profound sorrow. "I'm a siren, cursed to lure people to their doom with my song." A shiver ran down my spine. "But you don't seem like you want to hurt anyone." Her expression grew even more sorrowful. "I don't, but those who hear my song are irresistibly drawn to the water, where they drown. I cannot control it." Despite her warning, an irresistible pull tugged at me. I found myself inching closer to the waves, the siren's song growing louder, more enchanting. My mind screamed at me to stop, but my body seemed to move of its own accord, drawn as if by an invisible force. It felt like being caught in a powerful current, my willpower waning against the siren's enchanting melody. Just as I was about to step into the waves, a strong hand grabbed me and yanked me back. It was my brother, who had come searching for me. "Emily, what are you doing?" he shouted, his voice filled with panic. The spell was shattered. I gasped, looking back at the cove, but the siren had vanished. The haunting melody lingered in the air, a ghostly reminder of the encounter. From that day on, I steered clear of the cove, but the siren's mournful song and the sense of danger it evoked haunted my thoughts. Determined to understand what had happened, I spent the following weeks researching the cove's history. I discovered a pattern of unexplained drownings over the years. Locals spoke of the siren as a spirit bound to the cove by a tragic love story. According to the legend, the siren had once been a maiden deeply in love with a sailor. Their love was forbidden, and they planned to escape together. But a fierce storm sank the sailor's ship. Heartbroken, the maiden sang a mournful song that led her to the sea, where she drowned. I felt a deep sympathy for the siren and resolved to help. I sought out a local historian who told me about an ancient ritual that might lift the curse. It involved finding a personal item of the siren and returning it to the sea with an offering of flowers, accompanied by a heartfelt plea for her spirit to be freed. Driven by a sense of purpose, I spent days scouring the cove. Finally, I unearthed a locket buried in the sand, its chain entwined with seaweed. Inside was a tiny portrait of the maiden and her sailor. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I stood at the water's edge, holding the locket and a bouquet of wildflowers. With a trembling voice, I recited the ritual words, "Spirit of the sea, I offer these flowers and return your locket. May you find peace and be reunited with your love." As I cast the locket and flowers into the waves, the air grew eerily still. The haunting song rose one final time, then faded into the wind. A profound calm settled over me, and I felt a deep sense of peace. The siren's curse had been broken. From that moment on, the cove remained serene, free from the mournful song that once haunted its shores. Though I never forgot the siren and the tragic love story that bound her to the sea, I knew her spirit had finally found the peace it had longed for. The beach was safe once more, and the memory of the siren became a bittersweet reminder of both the danger and beauty of the ocean.